अंकिता आवाज आ रही है? Hi Ankita. Now there are two Ankitas.
Actually, that's me, but I don't know why they haven't changed my name. This is Taina.
This is
Taina from MSH, yeah.
okay. We'll change your name. Can you
Yeah,
raise your?
I did change it.
There are still two.
Yeah, so it's me without the video that's me. The one talking and without the video is me. And I did change my name in the login, but somehow it's not reflecting here.
No problem. I'll rename you. I hope
I'm T-A-Y-N-A.
Yep. Okay. T-A-Y-N-A. Can you give me your full name, please?
Yes, Taina Majithia. M-A-J-I-T-H-I-A.
M-A-J-I-T-H-I-A. Got it.
And Taina's T-A-Y-N-A. Yeah.
Yep.
Perfect. Thank you.
No worries.
Ankita ma'am, do I also need to be on video? Sorry.
Yeah, I'm on video. No, audio, video both. So enjoy. So what I'm thinking, so I think I have shared my link to various people. So whomsoever will be joining, so you need to change their name as well, right? Most
Yes,
probably,
sure.
and Mr. Gupta as well. Okay.
Okay. No problem.
Okay.
Otherwise, everyone can be Ankita as well. I think it's fine.
Okay. Hi, Taina.
You're on mute.
And once we start the session now, so we will take a screenshot from that side also, that one, right?
Okay.
Sure.
All right. Okay.
Do we have any presentations, Ankita?
No.
Okay.
Hi, Rahul.
Yeah, hi Ankita.
Okay.
Audible?
So you are through with the, so just give me a moment. Srinjoy, would you like to check with Paul, please?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
No worries.
So Rahul, we'll start with the welcome note by Paul, right? Our MD EBTC. And then we are going to have, just give me a moment, please. Remarks by Dr. A.K. Garg from AT, Senior Director, right? And then we'll be having a keynote speaker, Mr. Arvind Gupta. So he was also ex-CEO MyGov, and he is co-heading right now Digital India Foundation. And then we are going to have our panel discussion, which will be co-moderated by Aditya. She is legal consultant from METI Startup Hub and Innovation IPR Division METI. And then along with Paul only, right? So they'll be asking questions which we have already shared with our all panelists, right?
Yeah, fine. Sounds good.
Okay, and then consolidation by me.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Sounds good. So this,
All set to go.
yeah, pretty excited to be part of this thing. So
Same here. Hi, Sarah. How are you? I bugged her a
Hi,
lot.
sorry, I was on mute. I'm good.
Okay, so you're aware about the flow of the session, right, Sarah?
Hello. Yeah, am I audible now?
Yeah, you're loud and clear.
Yeah. Could you just, I mean, so like, are we going in a particular order? In the
Yes. So I've already earlier shared with you the agenda as well, but for the sake of all of us, again, I'll repeat that we'll start with the welcome note by our MD, Paul, right? And then have remarks by Dr. A.K. Garg from AT. Then we're going to have our keynote speaker, Mr. Arvind Gupta. Afterwards, we'll start with the panel discussion, co-moderated by Taina from METI Startup Hub, representing Innovation and IPR Division METI, and Paul. So they'll be asking 2 questions from each of our panelists, right?
Right.
And
Right.
thoughts, short and sweet.
Yeah, that's fine.
So just waiting for Paul, and
I had a word with Paul. He's just joining.
Okay. And I think with Mayuran as well, he had already linked. So should I check with him? Just give me a moment, please. I'm just checking with others as well. Hi, Paul.
Hello, hello.
So here we are, our MD EBTC, Paul V. Henson.
Hi, good to see you, Sarah. And Rahul.
Hi, Paul. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Hi,
And
Paul.
Sun is
Taina as well.
shining. Oh, you have a good background, Ankita. Why don't I have that?
I'll
Okay.
send it to you, Paul.
Yeah. So Paul, I'm just checking with Mayuran. So he already, just give me a moment.
It says here I'm in a practice session. To say that.
Yes,
No. Yeah.
so at 1:30 we will go on the live session. This doesn't
Okay.
have any participants on this session. So
Right.
Hi, Mayuran.
Hi everyone.
Myran.
Hey, Paul, how are you? Hi, Sarah.
hello.
Hi.
Excuse me.
Mayuran, you asking something?
I think he got a call or something. He went on mute.
Okay. Because I'll reiterate once again, flow of agenda, how we are going forward. So Paul and Taina, one important thing. So what we are planning that we, after first round of question from each of the panelists, we will take view from Mr. Gupta as well, right? But if he'll say that he will not stay longer, then we need to remove that part, right? So we'll just go along with the questions again. Yeah.
Yes, please let me know, and I'm working so you can alongside coordinate with me.
Sure.
Hi, Rahul.
So I'll update you all regarding flow of agenda. So we'll start with the welcome note by Paul, and then we're going to have the presentation from AT Senior Director Dr. A.K. Garg. He will give us briefing note, and then we'll have keynote by Mr. Arvind Gupta, ex-CEO MyGov, and he is heading Digital India Foundation as well. Then we'll start with the panel discussion, right? And wherein Paul and Taina will be co-moderating the session. And
Hello,
our
everybody.
panelists, hi Jane.
Hi, Paul. Glad to meet you. Hi, Paul. Glad to meet you and be co-moderating with you.
Same here. Good to see you, Jane. Thanks for joining.
Very nice to meet you.
Yes, likewise, Jane. Yes, I'll just switch on my video in a bit.
Okay. So should I once again reiterate the flow of agenda? All panelists are here, right? So Paul will start with the welcome remarks, and then we are going to have speaking note from Dr. Garg from AT, and then keynote by Mr. Arvind Gupta, and then panel discussion co-moderated by Paul and Taina from AT Startup Hub. And our panelists will be Jane Murphy from EDPO, and then Mayuran Palanisamy from KPMG India, and Rahul Rajendra Prasad from SDFC, and then Sarah Huck from KNS. And then consolidation of thoughts by me, Ankita Tyagi from EBTC.
Hi, everyone.
So I think after 4 minutes, we'll just start the session and session will be recorded.
Dr. Garka and Mr. Gupta, they will also join here, right? Panelists, okay.
Yes.
How many participants are you expecting?
We have more than 160 registrations. So we're expecting.
160.
Yeah.
Wow,
So we're
congratulations. That's
expecting
phenomenal.
at least 100. Yeah, let's see.
Yeah, and hopefully 50% will show up.
Absolutely. Srinjoy, I think we should open our session because I think participants, audience will take a few minutes to join in, right? So that we can start on time.
So audience can parallelly join in. I
Okay.
don't see anyone who's joined in as yet. So let's give it a couple of minutes and we'll go live.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Thanks. Ankita, shall we proceed to the live link?
Yes, I think we can start.
Okay,
I
sure.
think we should wait for the keynote speaker and Dr. Garka.
Sure. Ankita, can you check with them?
I'm just rechecking. Give me a moment, please.
Sure.
Hi, AJ. How are you? You're mute, and you're also called Ankita Tyagi.
Hi, Paul.
Hi.
Hi, hi. How are you?
Good, thank you. Good, thank you. Still standing the curveballs that the world is throwing at us at the moment.
Okay.
And
We'll
you?
start. It's fine. Things are going on.
True.
So you have not gone for the Christmas this time?
No, just cancelled.
Oh.
Not going to Europe this year. No.
Again becoming little tough.
Yeah. Yeah. Denmark. I don't know. Denmark. All schools are shut now, and from Monday, if you don't have a booster shot, you're not considered vaccinated at all. So it's very restrictive. So a lot of stuff will be closed, and there'll be quarantine rules, and who knows? Coming back beginning of January, if Europe gets red flagged, might be tough to get to India again.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, so better to stay put, rather than running all those risks. Anyway, Ankita, should we let?
So we are starting. We are going on the starting the webinar.
Ankita, you starting with some house rules, or I just jump straight into it?
No, you can start with the welcome note directly. I think so.
Okay, good. Well, thank you all, and welcome to this session today. It's been curated especially to share the experts' insights on all aspects of data protection rights in Europe and the new India data protection that is being tabled and discussed at the moment. And we know that you all, as startups and companies with great technologies in the data-related space, so I'm just using that as an umbrella term for anything related to IoT, machine learning, big data analysis, and so forth. And we know that you have challenges sometimes of dealing with all these rights. So we're hosting this jointly with the European Business and Technology Center's Europe-India Startup Forum and the METI Startup Hub, along with outreach partners, the Smart City Living Lab of IIIT in Hyderabad and the Gujarat University Startup and Entrepreneurship Council, all part of the startup ecosystem here in India. We do take collaborative growth and internationalization for startup and scale-ups between Europe and India, which is aligned with the overall mission of EBTC, of demand-driven internationalization and market access initiatives, along with all these partners that I've just mentioned. Today, we have Dr. Garg from the Ministry of Electronics and IT here in India. We have Mr. Arvind Gupta from the Digital India Foundation. Both are here to share their thoughts and insights. Whilst they, to this audience, I'm sure, hardly require any introduction, do allow me a few words nonetheless. Dr. Garg, I would say, is a proactive digital leader, if you will. Thank you, Dr. Garg, for being here. He's driving many mission-critical transformation initiatives at METI. He's a key contributor to various technology-oriented and trade and commerce-related strategic fora of Government of India, and is actively part of shaping up, if you will, the contemporary digital narrative. And you're a senior director at METI. You head the International Cooperation Division, which is also why we're closely working with you. And we know how keen and passionate you are on promoting startup and entrepreneurial ecosystems, especially in the realm of emerging technologies. The METI Startup Hub, our partner here today, is, for instance, one such example of an initiative that you have been a part of, Dr. Garg. You've also, to your credit, more than 20 research papers published in international journals, and you even hold 2 patents. So I think a lot of the topics that we've been discussing today is also something that you felt on your own body. So looking forward to hear a bit from you. Arvind Gupta, also welcome to you. Thank you for joining us. You have over 22 years of industry experience working in diverse sectors, a variety of leadership, policy, and entrepreneurial profiles in both India and also the US. You've got considerable experience in consumer internet, in digital media, big data analytics, digital transformation, IT policy, and e-governance. You were lately the CEO of MyGov here in India. You're an active member of NASCOM, and you're a founder member of iSpirit. You're obviously also a frequent speaker on anything digital in terms of topics at various fora. And you're currently heading the Digital India Foundation, which you've also been a co-founder of, or which you are a co-founder of. So I'm pleased to be part of this and look forward to an interesting discussion. I hope we can all use this opportunity today to exchange information, views, jointly deliberate on key challenges relating to data regimes in India and in Europe. We have a super interesting panel of experts and practitioners to shed light on some of these challenges. I'll introduce them all when we start the interactive session. Otherwise, it's a bit of a big download right now, but thank you to you all for being here. And I'm sure the deliberations of this session will help you in, hopefully help you in redesigning strategic market access for effective internationalization and obviously support growth of business and trade in the Europe-India corridor. So thank you all again for being here, and I'll now pass it on straight to Dr. Garg for a few words before we have the keynote address by Mr. Arvind Gupta. Following that, we'll have an interactive session, and I'll explain a bit how we want that to happen and make it really interactive and interesting for all of us and all of you more specifically. Okay, Dr. Garg, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, EBTC, first of all, for connecting us to a very, very trusted partner in terms of digital economy and as a trade-off per se. In the changing environment that we are living in, trust has become the hallmark for international trade, and Europe and India being a set of very vibrant, open democracies, the relationship between India and Europe is important. And if the digital economy is supposed to be the cornerstone for such trade relationships to emerge, then I think the data related regimes are very important to understand, because when you're talking about a trust, cross-border data flows in a trusted manner is important. So talking about data, we all understand that data has become the new fuel for innovation. Data is key. Provisioning data and protecting data have become the key enablers for a trusted trade to happen on the digital platform. Traditionally, the relationship on data has been between platforms and the consumer. And that was always a case, whereas was interested in protecting its privacy, the consumer was, the platforms were interested in garnering more and more data onto their platforms for increasing their trade presence and increasing the profile. And these platforms actually, based on the data, translate from being pure digital platforms to actually enabling all sectors of economy through that. So a proprietary and platform which is monopolizing the trade per se has been the hallmark and is an issue of concern for all economies to happen. And that was the reason where the government intervention became important. GDPR has been one such attempt globally, where the government has tried to see that how can they protect the rights of the consumer through a right privacy regime around data, and at the same time how the economic wealth of data can benefit the providers as an accumulated or as a concentrated ecosystem to the national or the local economy. These are the two very important factors, and I think our PDP bill, which is in the pipeline and which will see the light of the day, is also based upon the sovereignty and the protection of the consumer rights, which is very, very important in today's digital world. And I think when we need to understand the data regimes, or we need to actually facilitate data for innovation, which is very important. We need to understand the data protection regimes in various geographies, and this seminar will be important to understand what is the existing ecosystem in Europe. How do you enable yourself to do business in Europe? And at the same time, what is the emerging scenario on data protection in India? And this is important. At the same time, I will also like to highlight a very strong concern that there is no set of guidelines or standards when the cross-border data flows or protection of consumer or the individual or the citizen rights are concerned in the present regime globally. The world organizations have been little slow or have been non-starters on actually how to provide a common set of rules or standards on how data has to be protected. The privacy of the has to be respected, and that is a concern. So GDPR and the PDP bill that India has actually is a property of the parliament are actually becoming the global gold standards around which a future such protection regimes internationally will emerge. And so it is important to understand these two when we are talking about the international standards on data. And I think this workshop is very, very important. We have a strong community of startups which are making most of them are into digital space, making low cost, frugal solutions, which are very, very innovative and which can actually, which are now traveling into global ecosystems. And this will be a very, very good learning experience for them. I once again thank EBTC and MSH for actually enabling this very, very important. I myself are very excited to see what's all is going on in this platform. So all the best. Great learning experience for all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Garg, and thank you also for setting the context so eloquently, because I think that's exactly why we're here, and it's an evolving environment, and it's super important for the audience, for all our participants here to understand what are the pain points, what are the crunch points, what do we need to look at when we're looking at new markets, and where could this potentially go, and how can you mitigate any potential risks that are with this. So that's what we're going to shed some light on. So thank you very much, Dr. Garg. Mr. Gupta, I would like to leave the floor to you for your keynote address. 10-15 minutes of enlightenment. Thank you. Inspiration.
Thank you, Paul, for having me, Ankita and others, Varun, to organize this. And my very good friend, Dr. Ajay Garg, who's been a colleague and a very one of the more proactive people in the ministry, has already talked about the exciting world of data and data regulation in India. But let me just begin by saying that it takes me great pride and privilege to talk to one of our to a community which is India and EU, where we have one of the third largest trading relationship as a EU bloc, and the background has been the India-Europe framework that was agreed on, especially around technology, which says that we have to work together to safeguard personal data and privacy. And Dr. Garg did mention that at the background has been one of these path-breaking regulation that came in EU, which is the GDPR bill. But India, of course, wants to learn from the best in the world and has learned in the best in the world. But our approach has been very different. And I'm just going to start my timer because I am, as a professor, sometimes I do overshoot my time. So let me begin by saying two things. The approach that India has taken is very different in embracing the fourth industrial revolution. All of you know this by now, is that there are about 10 platforms in the world which are 1 billion user platforms. Dr. Garg and Paul, you mentioned about the need for trust in technology. Trust comes with better governance, better value creation, better societal needs, and adoption by society and use. The 9 platforms of this billion user platforms are privately owned. 5 from the US, 4 from the Shenzhen Valley of China, 5 from the Silicon Valley of US. There is only one platform in the world, or a network, or an open system, open digital infrastructure, which is actually a public digital infrastructure. And it's not owned by a private corporation. And that's in India. That's India stack, the Aadhaar-based stack. Now that stack, as all of you know, has multiple components: the identity layer, the paperless layer, the payments layer, and of course the 4th layer, which is what we are talking today, which brings about a lot of transparency and trust, how our data is going to be used. And that's the consent layer / the DAPA layer, whatever nomenclature you want to use it. The DAPA stands for Data Empowerment and Protection Architecture. Now, within this name lies what I want to talk about. There are 2 elements in this: empowerment and protection, innovation and regulation. That's where the balance is. These 2 things are not going to be in isolation. And India has taken an approach that we need to balance between the 2, making sure that, becoming the data billionaire of the world that India is. Indians have 3 things going in the digital economy. Number 1, more and more Indians are going digital. We've seen the highest velocity of digitization in the last 2 years. Even before the pandemic, the adoption of digital was very high, but pandemic, has really pushed that to the limit. Our velocity of digital adoption, digital payments, if it's a surrogate for that, it's really, really high. 2, Indians are building digital public infrastructure. We are not, everything, and I can mention a few things, whether it's the health stack or the e-commerce stack or the data stack, the voice stack, the travel stack. Our approach has suddenly transformed into doing everything with building digital infrastructure as a public good. 3, and that's the point that I think I wanted to bring to the discussion, is that Indians are becoming super data rich. We are becoming digitally literate before they're becoming alphabetically literate, and we are really leapfrogging into the data 4th industrial revolution with a lot of rich data. Now, given this rich data, it becomes even so more important for us to ensure that there is trust in the way this is used. And that's where the India stack, the 4th layer, which is going to be omnibus, all the stacks that we build today, are building or will build in the future, comes into play. And it is this layer, and of course it will go a little bit of changes given the final format of the PDP bill, but the intent of the PDP bill has been making sure that there is balance between innovation and regulation, and that the monetization of the data and the empowerment from the data comes in from the consumers, who are the real beneficiaries because they've generated that, and not only some few digital platforms across the world. The global platforms monetize that a lot and take away everything from the consumers, because as I said, consumers are becoming more digitally literate before they're becoming even financially literate or alphabetically literate. So that is the core of it. What else do I want to talk about, which is very important, is that this new trust in technology and is a new thing globally, because we are seeing the technology world is completely changing as we go ahead. So where does the element of governance, value creation come in? And that is where, again, this public platforms approach that India has taken, and the PDP bill is a policy, agile policy, that is going to enable that at the forefront of transforming how we view our assets, how we view our platforms, how we view our users. But as I said, I've said this in the past, Paul and everybody else, India's approach to treating digital and data has not been top down, has been bottom up. And our innovation and our regulation and our policy making is making sure that everybody is included in this. There is no exclusion from a policy perspective as well as from a platform perspective. Let me give you one example. All of us know about this payments platform called UPI, Unified Payments Interface. Now, the word Unified Payment Interface is a very integral part of it. The department which is co-hosting it, METI, has been integral to making that. One of the things that many people don't realize, that then in 2016, when India had only about 400 million internet connections, today we have about 800 million plus. There were a lot of people who would use UPI not on a smartphone, but on an ordinary phone, that $8-10 phone that we have probably not, this audience has never seen in the last 10 years. But a payment could be done with that. A remittance could be done in that. And there was a significant usage. That's of course coming down, but has that feature from UPI been discontinued? No, because we still believe there are users who still use that, and we don't want to exclude them from financial transactions. And that's one of the reasons that you see about 5 billion transactions a month. That number, in my view, is still about only 20% of the levels that it will reach by next year. And in another 12 15 months, we'll probably be doing about 1 billion transactions a day rather than 200 million a day. So so that's the inclusion. That's the inclusion aspect that either both our policies and our platforms have had. With this, I think we are spearheading into an area that where data will unlock a lot of empowerment. Let me give you two more examples. One is health. We've seen today with an open platform called Coven, which is part of this whole big integrated platform called the Health Stack, or the National Digital Health Platform that is being built. Today, you can actually just do a vaccine booking on a WhatsApp as a front end, and a back end is common, whether you do it through an app or any other app, or Arogya Setu or anything else. Simple thing as a WhatsApp. You can get your certificates from there, and we still have to ensure that this data and the data policies are clear, that the data is not owned by the front end platforms, but are owned either by the user or by the and the government acts as a fiduciary to safeguard the user's data. The data really belongs to who got vaccinated, what is their vaccination details to the citizen, and where, and all the data, the metadata belongs to the government, nothing in between. So this is how we are treating the approach of open data. Three, going forward, the monetization of data, account aggregator, the credit. Today, we've seen a proliferation of illegal loan activities, what are called the shark loans, where people are just giving loans at a very, very high interest rate, and then they disappear also, those apps. And we banned some over 10,000 apps which have dubious origins. Just give loans out, and then they do a lot of harassments and things like that. So, or maybe are doing other fraudulent activities, not even giving out loans in the pretext of loans. Where we are fixing this is creating this account aggregator, and combined with the open credit enablement, you can now give consent to what data you want to share with a credit card company, or with a bank, or as an SME with a credit department, or a loan department, or a working credit department of an NBFC, and share that with a purpose, with consent, and with a limited time. It is encrypted. It cannot be shared further on. And with that infrastructure in place, and when the PDP bill comes in, think of the empowerment that small consumer can have, saying, this is my payments, this is the kind of transactions I'm doing, and given this transaction history, can you now give me or rate me and give me a loan? And then at a marketplace, which would then come and bid on that loan and give you the best rate possible, and you choose. And then to secure the banks and the financial institutions a complete view of the on consent of how they can get their EMIs back or their monthly installments back, all banks tied together. So completely transparent system where data is at the core of it, which is going to enable this whole, empower the consumer, the small trader, the small businessman, and then, you know, digitize the whole value chain, remove friction from it, and really enable the right interest rate loans. So a lot is coming with this new data-based innovation. You know, I think it's not just the digital economy, it's a data and digital economy, and that we are living through as we speak today. I think the last point I do want to mention is that you know, I think the current PDP bill in India, the JPC has little expanded the scope to include non-personal data, because they're thinking that if there is going to be one data authority, might as well manage both the personal data side of it and the non-personal data side of it. I think it's welcome, but also it's important to keep the timelines in mind so that we at least see the light, the bill sees the light of the day in this session, or at max the next session of the day. I think I look forward. I would just end by saying that all the data adequacy decisions that EU and Dr. Garg talked about, EU and India, of safe and secure cross-border data transactions and data transfers are in place, and we see startup collaboration, innovative collaboration between Europe and India, and I also look forward to hearing from the panel about their views on how they think, the experts, how they think it's going to shape up. And last but not the least, I always say this, and I'm going to leave the comment over here. The data cycle of innovation has just started in India. I think we are entering into that golden age where people think all the value has been created. I totally disagree. I think the value creation, we are probably just at the start of that innovation cycle, and a lot more is to come as we go forward. So thank you again, and I look forward to the discussion.
Thank you very much, Arvind, also for your insights, and also for emphasizing the fact about trust, which I think also belongs between any two business partners looking at cross-border. So not only the data, but also in that relationship. And I know that the audience, there's a lot of startups and smaller companies with brilliant ideas, innovative solutions, which could also be interesting for European partners in any which way. But obviously, we need to know how protect the privacy, how do we protect the data, and still have a useful solution, and not look at these laws as a hindrance, but maybe even as a benefit for a better future, if you will, future engagement between business partners, and for the benefit of the consumers. Arvind and AJ, I hope you can stay back for another 20 minutes, because the way that we'd like to structure it, when I say we, I'm talking about my co-moderator, Tanya Majithia, who will join me in posing some questions to the experts to tickle out some insights from them. So thank you, Tanya, for joining me, being co-moderator. You're a lawyer by qualification. You've worked with CPAM for several years, and you're now with the Ministry of Electronics and IT in India with the Startup Hub, and supporting exactly on these topics within the Startup Hub. So good to have you on board as a person daily involved in this, which I cannot say that I myself am. But I'm very interested in also, just like you all, in knowing what are the issues to look out for. I'd like to spend just a minute on introducing the panel, who you'll all hear. We have 4 experts, and they're all experts in their own rights. We have with us Jane Murphy. Jane, you're heading the European Data Protection Office. You're also a corporate lawyer by education, and you're a non-executive board member of several companies, also dealing with these topics. So thank you for agreeing to be here and allowing us to pick your brain to the benefit of all the startups and companies listening in here. We also have Mayuyan. He's a partner, national lead for data privacy at KPMG in India. He has 16 years of experience as a technology risk consultant, and has been dealing with this also on a day-to-day basis, also cross-border technology collaboration. So I think he on his own skin has also felt about some of the challenges and been part of the whole evolving environment of the data privacy altogether. We also have you, Rahul Radhika Prasad. You are with the HDFC Bank. You're a data privacy officer within the information security group. And obviously, you're also dealing with a variety of companies of all sizes, also in cross-border transactions. And you also hear from many of your clients and counterparts of what issues are data privacy topics being dealt with. We also heard Arvind Gupta talk about financial transactions in one or two of his examples. So I think it's good to have you on board as a world to say how important this is and how we can deal with a lot of these things. We also have Sarah Hack. You're with KNS Partners, a lawyer there, a litigator actually in the field of intellectual property laws, and you regularly assist in enforcement and protection of dispute resolution. So I can imagine across a variety of sectors that you've also had some of these topics pop up on your table. So also good to hear about your experience in this field. So thank you all for being here. And the way we'll do it, we'll pose a question to each of you, Tanya and myself. And after the first four replies, Arvind, I'll ask for you maybe for a quick reaction to that first round of questions, and then we'll have another 4 questions after that. Yeah, so there might be something that you want to get some more information on, some more insights. Thank you for being here and joining in. So, Diana, if it's okay with you, I'll pose the first question to
yes, absolutely.
Jane. Yeah, good to see you, Diana. I think Arvind was spotlighted for quite a while there. Good. Jane, heading the European Data Protection Office, representing a lot of non-EU companies that fall or need to know about what is the scope of the European GDPR regulation. Could you enlighten us all on GDPR and when does the GDPR become applicable to companies in India? Jane.
Sure. Thank you, Paul. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for having me today. Very interesting topic and something very important for international trade, especially for India, because, as was mentioned earlier, India and Europe, third trading block. So important to know what to do and especially not what to do. So in terms of GDPR, how does it apply to Indian companies? It's rather simple. It's rather simple when you know the concepts, but looking on a case-by-case basis, it can be a little bit tricky. So there are 2 basic principles. If you're a non-EU company, so you're an Indian company, and you're offering products or services to people in the EU, no matter what their nationality is. So it doesn't matter if they're residents of the EU, as long as the people are in the EU while you're offering products or services, even if you're offering the products or services for free. So you can be a non-profit organization, a charity organization. If you're offering products or services to people in the EU, you fall under the GDPR. Second criteria is if you monitor the behavior of people who are in the EU. And typically we'll see that if you're using cookies on your website, you're doing analytics, IP addresses are considered as personal data, personal data. So if you're monitoring the behavior of people in the EU, then you fall under the GDPR. And so there are a whole bunch of obligations at that point. You have to look at what your processing activities are. Doesn't mean that your entire company falls under the GDPR. It means that you have to look at the activities, your operations that do that offering or collecting or processing of the personal data. So maybe it's just, part of your activities. So that part has to be GDPR compliant. And what that entails is the different principles of the GDPR, of course, but there's one thing, if there's one message I want to put across today, is this forgotten obligation for non-EU companies. And we call it the forgotten obligation because it's totally forgotten. So it only applies to non-EU companies. And that's the important thing to remember. It's the obligation for non-EU companies to appoint a data protection representative. And that's what our company does. That's why, our clients are exclusively non-EU companies. And I can tell you, it's really difficult to raise awareness on this because the GDPR has been really aimed at European companies, right? And so all of the guidance and guidelines out there, even by data protection authorities, was geared towards European companies. And because they're in Europe, they don't need a representative because they're here. So non-EU companies have one extra obligation. That's Article 27 of the GDPR. And that means that they have to appoint a representative. And the point of the representative is to be like the go-between. It's your intermediary in Europe. And that representative will be there to help you handle data subject access requests. So anybody who wants to exercise their rights under the GDPR or answer questions from the data protection authorities, that's a really important aspect, and also hold a copy of your record of processing activities. And there's a specific sanction for not appointing a representative. It's 10 million euros or 2% of 2% of worldwide turnover. So it's something to be really careful about. So if you're offering products or services to people in the EU, or you monitor the behavior of people in the EU, you have to be GDPR compliant. And one extra obligation that you have is to appoint a representative in the EU. So I hope that kind of sums it up.
Very succinct. Thank you. I think that's important and a good first takeaway. We'll remember that for sure. Tanya, do you want to pose the next question?
Yes, thanks, Paul. So my question would be for our esteemed panelist, Mr. Mayuran Palaswamy. Keeping in mind that EU GDPR also prescribes high penalties, can you tell us the enforcement trend by the EU regulators in the last couple of years and the kind of penalties imposed on these entities? Over to you, sir.
Sure, Tina. Thank you so much for that question. And first of all, thank you for this wonderful opportunity. So I think this is a question I think better asked to Jane because she's from that region, but I can share my point of view. So I think the whole objective of GDPR and kind of the way it is getting enforced is to really create a little bit of, how do we say that, scare among the companies when they really handle the personal information of their customers or third parties, whoever it is, right? That's the whole objective. And that's one of the reasons the penalty is also quite high, right? So while we are talking about 4% of the turnover or 20 million euros, whichever is the highest going to be the maximum extent that the penalty can go. Obviously, there could be other damages, right, which can be claimed by the somebody who has gone through the challenge. So, I mean, this is information which is publicly available. We have been seeing a lot of penalties being imposed on various global companies, including Marriott and so on and so forth, right? That is happening in reality, right? So maybe the current situation is that, I mean, the large focus has been with the, I would say that the big sharks, right, who are processing personal information and subjected to these kind of penalties. But slowly, I would say that this will kind of span to the mid-size and smaller companies, right? Because at the end of the day, the volume of data being processed by the mid-size and the smaller companies also equally huge now. Right? Technically, you can't really classify the volume of processing based on the size of the organization anymore, right? There could be a smaller company who could be only into data analytics. So then, I mean, you do more number of data processing compared to anybody else, right? So, I mean, just to specifically answer your question, Tina, this is getting picked up now, right? And in the last few years, we have seen many cases where the organizations have been penalized with huge sum. What we are, I mean, which is going to happen, I wouldn't say that we are waiting to see. Which will happen is that the focus will shift to the medium and smaller companies, right? I think that is where it becomes relevant to the startups and scale-ups to be prepared in terms of what are the bare minimum. So probably a little later after everybody answers, I'll also touch upon how I see that part is evolving, right? In terms of the preparedness, what is that should be focusing on immediately, so on and so forth. Back to you, Tina.
Right. Thank you, Mayuran. This was very insightful. Paul, are you ready with your next question?
Yes. Also, thank you for me, Marian. I'll pose the next question to you, Rahul. HCFC, and we know that HCFC is already involved in a variety of programs related to scale-ups and accelerator programs now, obviously in data-related sectors and the data-related space. I want to ask you, what role do you see that financial institutions play while dealing with data-related issues, especially in the wake of this dynamic environment of data protection, both in Europe and in India?
Yeah, sure. So thanks, Paul. It's a very interesting question. And as a bank, if you have seen the way Mr. Arvind Gupta has also told, there's a lot of changes which is happening the way the banking is happening in India. So what we call a typical brick and mortar type of thing, we are moving towards digitization. We are giving more and more rights to the customer, and everything moving digital. UPI is one of the examples which Mr. Arvind Gupta has told. Now, if you look at financial institutions, the way the customer onboarding happens, we get a lot of data about customer, which ranges from normal personal data to his name or date of birth to something very sensitive like gender. Also, we need to onboard a customer. And it becomes very important for us as a bank or as a financial that the way digitization is happen, privacy by design, what we call has to be part of our processes. And when I say privacy by design, as Mr. Arvind Gupta has told that it has to be given more and more rights to the customer. Okay, so the privacy has to be by default rather than customer asking for it. And we see that a lot of things which may come, like technologies like your anonymization or pseudonymization, what we call privacy enhancing technologies, really is going to play an important role. One of the key concern what we see, and what Mr. Garg has also spoken about data transfer. So there are many new privacy enhancing technologies which are coming in space right now. We generally talks about things like homomorphic encryption or something called synthetic data, which is coming up. So those things can be easily solved using those things. So the future, what I see is most companies has to adopt it. Though these things couple of years back were part of some PhD thesis, but now they have become reality. Many organizations have started using these technologies. For example, Apple uses homomorphic encryption. They uses differential privacy analysis sort of technologies for analytics. So company has to kind of adopt it. And then we have to engage with certain startups. So obviously these things comes very important. So the future is going to be privacy enhancing technologies to ensure that privacy is there by design, and by default.
Good, thank you, Rahul. And I think that's also one of the drivers of what has been discussed for the data privacy bill here in India as well. Yeah, I mean that has to be the intent, that something like this is done by default and not only on request by consumers. Yeah, I think that's a clear message, and I also think it's important. Yeah, because what consumers, I mean, how many of all our consumers are so enlightened that they understand the importance of data privacy. Yeah. And I think at the moment, many of these platforms that Mr. Gupta was mentioning are sort of making benefits out of that many people are not aware of that. Yeah. Okay. Tanya, you have another question?
Can I, Paul, quickly intervene?
Yeah. Okay.
And this is the technologist in me speaking. What we are also doing, and this is something very exciting that the world can, all of us can collaborate, is to codify these policies into a platform. So an HDFC bank, an ICICI bank, a small AU bank, and a consumer alike will have the benefit of, like the way they have benefit of UPI, things can ride on top of it. So we are going to create a common infrastructure, codified infrastructure with the right policies in place. So not everybody has to learn each policy implication. It becomes a shared platform. Just wanted to mention that.
Thank you, Arvind. I think that's also aligned with what Dr. Garg mentioned earlier about the lack of standards, the set of rules also in the, yeah, exactly. Okay, good. Tanya, over to you.
Thanks, Paul. So my next question would be for Ms. Sarah Huck. So tell us, Sarah, businesses present in our audience are already working cross-border, and a lot of them are looking for new markets in Europe. So what would be the legal implications they should keep in mind while dealing with data? Over to you, Sarah.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. That's actually a very broad question, so I'm going to sort of divide the answer, in terms of what exactly are the provisions of the PDP bill and how, different from the GDPR. Actually, it won't be very incorrect to say that being compliant with GDPR is actually not, does not mean that you're actually complying with the PDP bill provisions, because they're slightly more detailed and slightly more, considering it's a later bill. So I'm just going to quickly go through, very some definitions that would essentially be very useful for our participants, in the sense that when the PDP bill, of course, like any other bill, would give a definition. So the person to whom the data refers to is actually referred to as a data principal, and the entity which is determining the purpose and means of processing that personal data is the data fiduciary, and the entity, which could be a state company or a person which is processing that data, is actually the data processor. So the bill defines these three, and accordingly, there are certain compliances that are supposed to be done depending upon whether you're a data fiduciary or a data processor. And it also creates an authority, which is the Data Protection Authority, which is established by the government. Now, and unlike the GDPR, they also create a different class of data fiduciaries, which data fiduciaries, which is again classified by the Data Protection Authority. And that of course there's a more detailed definition for personal data, and there is another category which is sensitive personal data. So personal data could be anything which relates to your traits or attributes, but sensitive personal data is by definition more sensitive, and all your financial data, health data, any biometric or sexual orientation, any of those, your political views, those come under the category of sensitive personal data. And why this classification is important is because there are different compliances on the basis of whether the data is actually just personal data or is it sensitive personal data. Or there is another third category which is actually missing from the GDPR, which is critical personal data, though there's not a lot in the bill on that, but there is a particular category, critical personal data, which for which the storage is different, for which the storage can only be done within India. So and the applicability of the bill is again territorial as well as extraterritorial, in the sense that if some company is profiling data principles in India, then the bill also applies to them regardless of where they're based. So essentially, and there are a lot of exemptions given under the bill, that it doesn't apply to, say, anonymized data, as long as it's meeting the requirements of irreversibility. And the government agencies could be exempted by the government, or if it's required in a legal or judicial proceeding, or something like that, then also it can be exempted from the bill. And there's one very interesting thing called the sandbox, which is that certain data fiduciaries could be included in a sandbox. It is a regulatory sandbox, which to essentially encourage innovation in AI or machine learning or other emerging technologies. So, when we talk about compliance, and, the privacy notice has been talked about, but I believe most people would not be aware of what actually is a privacy notice, or, what is the limitation for which. So under the GDPR, you can retain the data for a longer purpose than for which it was taken. But under the PDP bill, you have to essentially, once the purpose for which the data has been taken, for which specific consent has to be taken, and the definition of consent again under the PDP bill is more elaborate and more restrictive, because it has to be very specific, clear, and free and informed, and that was after the Puttaswamy judgment. So there are a lot of differences in terms of the compliances under GDPR and PDP bill. And the fines accordingly are quite different. So and there are certain things that you have to essentially you're mandated by the bill to do, that you have to have a privacy by design policy, and the Data Protection Authority has the power to approve and certify such policies. Then you have to have transparent processes, you have to make that information public. Then you need to implement certain security standards and practices, which could be de-identification or encryption, and you have to de-identify the data, which is again a process to essentially mask the data using some identifiers. Then, again, in case of a breach, the GDPR says that you have to notify the supervising authority within 72 hours. But within the PDP bill, you have to, report a breach if it is likely to be harmful to a data principal. So there are, multiple things that, need to be complied with. And the most important thing is to essentially classify the data, whether it's just personal data, or is it sensitive personal data, or is it critical personal data, because that also defines whether the data can be transferred cross-border or not, and what kind of compliances need to be done.
Thank you, Sara. Yeah, so what you're saying is if I'm based in India and I'm looking at the European market, it's crucial that I understand the European regulation, its differences from the Indian regulation, and vice versa. Yeah, because
you need to be compliant with both. And just because we're GDPR compliant would not make you automatically compliant with the new bill as it is right now.
Right. Understood. Thanks, Sara. I would just like to ask Arvind, would you like to comment on any of the inputs you've heard so far?
I did already comment on
one, yeah.
So when Rahul had mentioned that, but just a very high level comment. Like GDPR, India's PDP bill is the omnibus bill. There will be sectoral regulations that will come in beyond that. So health can that will like omnibus PDP bill, then health can have its own policies, fintech will have its own policies, RBI will have its own policies, and that's where the intent is for this to be an horizontal, and vertically all segments will have that. Two, as I said, there are best practices that every society should learn from each other, but there is also a common harmonization, but every country's little democratic values, societal values will be different in term, and developmental needs will be different for every country to adopt one single standard, or every society to adopt one single standard. So given that in mind, at least the common minimum standards should be evolved. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Arvind. I think, Dania, you have a question for Jane that actually fits quite well with what we've just been discussing, where we're leaving off now.
Absolutely. Thank you, Paul. So Jane, tell us, India will establish a new regulatory body called Data Protection Authority to oversee the compliance and challenges in the proposed legislation. So what do you think will be the challenges that EU regulators may face since the GDPR was introduced in this region? Over to you, Jane.
Yeah, I think the important thing to realize is that the Data Protection Authority is not there just as the bad guy to, hand over all these financial fines and other types of fines, because we have to remember that it's just not, monetary fines. They can also, cut the traffic of data, shut down any, cross-border transfers and things like that. But we have to see Data Protection Authorities, and hopefully in India, is the role of raising awareness and helping companies actually. So the data protection authorities, there are 47 different ones in Europe. There are 17 alone, just in Germany alone. So they each have their own way of working. Nothing is harmonized in that sense. So the role is very different in every country. But what we see a trend is, they have two major roles. One of them is to provide guidance. So you go on their websites, it's a wealth of information. They have templates for, every procedure basically that you need to put in place, every policy you need to do, and a lot of guidance, and they do seminars. So that's a really important thing for SMEs to know. They have to, go to the websites and get that information. And hopefully the Indian Data Protection Authority or authorities will do the same. And the second role obviously is to be there, to kind of supervise compliance with GDPR. And we mentioned the role that they're having now in terms of, sanctions. It's really increasing and very quickly. So we have a lot of activist groups who are bringing these complaints also to the data protection authorities. So they're facilitating the collection of, all the non-compliance, and really something to keep in mind to be absolutely in line with the GDPR. And last point is that what we saw at the beginning of GDPR is over-reporting. So the data protection authorities were just, stuck with so much over-reporting because companies were really scared of, how GDPR would affect them because of the fines. So if they had any doubt on whether to report a data breach or report anything that was not, in their sense, totally compliant, they were just making sure that they would report, and they, put that into the data protections authorities' hands and wait for the outcome. So that really stalled the development of the data protection authorities. So hopefully that will not happen in India. Make sure that they're properly staffed, they have the resources to be able to have this role of supervising, but in a very positive, dynamic, and constructive way.
Right. Thanks, Jane. Thank you for making the whole regime of data privacy and policy so clear amidst the two geographies. Over to you, Paul.
Thank you, Tanya. I'd like to turn to Marian, and I know, Marian, you also have a question, but maybe before asking a question, maybe you could just respond whether you have any practical early bird tips for companies towards these changes in the PDP bill, because you've been engaged in such support for a while. Do you have any? Can you shed some light on some of the major impacts and some of the specific advice you have to companies in those sectors?
Sure, Paul. So I can give some high-level point of view. I know that we have very limited time in front of us. So I think as startup or a scale-up, I think organizations are slightly in an advantageous position compared to a matured corporate, because end of day, if you look at data privacy or data protection, it's a cultural change within the organization. Right. So it is easy to change your culture and set the tone when you're small and growing, rather when you're really huge and established, you have multiple systems. Or, I'm sure Rahul will agree to me, like in a bank like HDFC or any other bank, right? It takes slightly longer because they are an established business for a long time now, right? So I think starting early is important, number one. Second is that when you look at the compliance have to be achieved at multiple levels. One is at the organization level. Right, as an organization, right, you have the right governance put in place because you are responsible end of day for making sure that you kind of process the data in the right manner, right, as per the agreement with your controller in that case, or in whatever the agreement or the contractual obligations you have. Second is that how do you really enable the platform to be privacy compliant? I think that is where many times people react in a slightly different manner. I think Rahul also pointed out this privacy by design. Right now, this is a growing area like privacy, called privacy engineering, right? Like how DevSecOps, right? Now privacy ops is picking up, and this is what many people are trying to do now, where you try to build the privacy concepts within the platform rather than keeping it as an afterthought. Right? You build a platform, then you try to bolt on something, then there are chances that you may actually touch the entire architecture of the platform, or the functionality can get interrupted. All right. So it is better to bring in your privacy thought at the beginning of the product thinking itself, right? When you can kind of conceptualize the product, bring privacy there and see what are the. It is not that you can satisfy everything through privacy by design. I think we have to be practical there, right? So idea is not to kind of do a product under privacy by design and tell everybody that okay, you're 100% privacy compliant. It is not going to be that easy. But at least you can think about what are the bare minimum stuff, like having the right techniques or technology put in, whether it's encryption or anonymization, so on and so forth, right? So I think for scale-ups and startups, these are my advice. Obviously, start early, right? I mean, many times we have this attitude of wait and watch, see that how the PDPB is going to shape up, how the enforcement is going to happen. So once, right, take the ones which are quick wins, right, low-hanging fruits, just fix those issues. Obviously, at least know the bigger ones. Right. So many times data localization is seen as a big challenge for organizations. It is a big challenge. Not only seen, it is a big challenge, right? So don't try to solve that problem right away, right? But at least know about the implications, right? And know the risks, what need to do, so on and so forth. So that proactive approach will really help. And second is that if you're a product company, think about how do you really strengthen your platform with privacy controls. Paul, probably I'll stop there. This is a topic which can go really in depth, but
But thank you for being so concrete and specific. I think that was a few good tips to the audience. Thank you for that, Marian. Tanya, we have 2 quick questions to Rahul and Sara. Will you start with one for Rahul?
Yes, absolutely. So Rahul, please tell us what are the different technology solutions that are available to deal with data processing related issues?
Yeah, thanks, Tanya. And again, this is a very interesting topic because a lot time privacy has been seen as a not an enabler to the business, but a limiting. What we have to see is that the privacy is going to be enabler of a business, not a limiting factor. And what these privacy enhancing technologies, what we are talking about, are going to enable that thing. So there's always a trade-off when we say privacy and organizational needs. So whenever we are doing something, there is always a trade-off. But these privacy enhancing technologies, when we talk about things like homomorphic encryption, and when we talk about synthetic data, we talk about something called as federated learning. See, these all things would kind of optimize those trade-offs. That is something what we have to look at. And these all technologies kind of ensure that the privacy is working as a firewall, which is self-executable rather than I asking for something and then doing something. So these all things would enable you make sure that these controls are self-executable. So a lot of time what happens is everyone says that data is new oil, right? But I have a slightly divergent view, because every data is associated with an individual who has a right of self-determination on that data. And the way the data is trickling down in various processes, the way the data is getting, digital data is getting trickled down, things like privacy enhancing technologies are gonna help a lot because these technologies, especially when we talk about encryption and other things, new concept in encryption, it ensures that the data is being processed without actually looking at the data. So there are new terms in encryption and other when we talk about that. But we have to see that it doesn't one shoe fits for all. So you have to contextually look at that when you are when and what technology has to apply when. So let's take an example that suppose if I am giving my data to a machine which has some predefined rules and the data is getting processed, then things like homomorphic encryption and things like federated learning works a lot. But when I'm giving my data to so this is more to a developer. So suppose a startup comes to me and they say that, okay, I want to develop a product for you. And for that, I need to give them real data. In that, there is a concept of synthetic data where I give a data which is generated. It looks like a personal data, but that's not a granular level of data which I need to share with them. So there the things like synthetic data plays an important role. So that's what we have to see, that when we have to apply these privacy technologies, when we have to implement what we have to do. But the bottom line is that these are going to be future, and the way the privacy notice are defined. I myself being in this domain for last 12 years, but it's difficult for me sometimes when organizations say that we may process your data, we may share your data this way. So these technologies may actually help to streamline those things and help to implement those controls more accurately. That's my take on that.
Thank you, Rahul. This was very succinctly put. And I think by citing the right of self-determination, you've hit bullseye. So thank you so much. Over to you, Paul.
Thank you, Tanya. And thank you, Rahul. I think some of the technology you're talking about might even be in the making, might even be innovated right now at Métis Startup Hub, yeah, with some of the people from the audience or elsewhere in other incubators and startup ecosystem players here in India. Yeah, so thanks for that. Sara, I have a quick last question, not the one we had actually spoken about, because you actually already replied to that, answered that earlier. I wanted to pick one of the questions from the chat, also because it's very relevant to what both Dr. Garg and Arvind Gupta were talking about standards in the regulations, harmonization across borders. So I wanted to ask you, do you know whether there is a treaty in Europe on data protection, or is it something that is being worked on? There's a big free trade agreement being negotiated right now. Is it potentially a part of that? Is that something that you might know anything about?
Well, very briefly, actually, I mean, EU does not consider India as, one of the places which is very safe for data because, we're just coming up with an comprehensive data protection law. And, in fact, there was a study done that, if cross-border, trans-border data flows actually stops, then because India is an ICT enabled service, then it would even a 1% drop in that trans-border data flow would result in actually a loss of 7 million hit to India's total trade. So the whole idea behind the PDP bill was to essentially bring India to the same level in terms of compliance with the data protection regulations, which the EU already has, and so does the USA. And that is essentially also the crux of the Kutuswamy. There was the judgment which upheld privacy as the fundamental right. Treaty as of now, so to speak, but it has been discussed time and again in terms of because even Prime Minister, the Japanese Prime Minister had actually talked about this in one of the G20 sessions, that there has to be a global data free flow with trust concept, which which is essentially what we're trying to do with once the PDP bill actually becomes an act. I believe there would not be a need for a treaty, so to speak, because India would also be at the same level.
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks very much, and for answering off the cuff this question. Thanks very much, and I hope we also responded to Neha, who asked the question in the chat box. Well, Arvind, do you have any remarks to any of the inputs you've heard the past 10 minutes, 15 minutes?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, Arvind. Ajay, any comments from you? If not, then I personally would like to thank all the experts for your inputs. I think it painted a picture of the importance of focusing on this also in whatever business engagement collaborations you have within the Europe-India business corridor. So it's something that we have to take care of. It's an absolute. It seems a bit big and vast and mystified when you read about it in the first time. But I think with your insights, your expertise, I think that has broken it down to a manageable level for laymen like myself, and I think a lot of the audience as well. Ankita, you wanted to propose a vote of thanks and finalize the session.
Absolutely. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Taina. And thank you to everyone, including our audience, right? Because of them, we want to organize this session. And very insightful thoughts from all of our panelists, bringing in European as well as Indian perspectives. I started with Dr. Garg's comment that, yes, we need trust whenever we are dealing with data, right? I mean, cross-border data, a lot more companies from India side is actually reaching to different markets in EU and USA. So they need to protect their data. Now, as rightly Rahul was like, data is not new oil, right? So he is of different viewpoint. No, it's not like that. With case by case basis, we are evolving. I think in Europe also, a lot more things are coming in. And now we have our new data protection regime in India. Hopefully in coming new year, we'll get our as an act. But yes, participation from our audience, from our stakeholder, their viewpoints, as Jane has rightly mentioned, that DPA is there, but if users are not providing their viewpoints, not sharing their feedback, then it's actually useless, right? So hopefully we are envisaging the same for our Indian side. And important tips for our audience, especially, that you need to start early and then rightly govern with your platform, and all processes should be in right place. And privacy by designization. And as Mr. Gupta rightly mentioned, that all of us need to create a common platform, because India is actually very data rich, right? So now it's a high point, it's a very critical time to take a very look and a very thoughtful scale up. So that's it from my side, and thank you everyone for your valuable time and valuable and tune with us for similar kind of session.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.